Rising inflation, higher interest rates, soaring food prices and a weakening ruble. This defines the Russian economy as 2024 comes to a close. Massive war expenditures, high mortality rates, Western sanctions and isolation from global markets have all left their mark. And this is just the publicly available information. Experts suggest the real situation is much worse.
Статистика все время засекречивается, да?
Statistics are constantly being classified. This is not a sign that everything is fine and that inflation, recession and other challenges are about to be conquered. The more data they hide, the clearer it is that the situation is far from rosy.
Price hikes in stores cannot be hidden from the average Russian. According to Росстат, over the past year, the price of potatoes has risen by 83%, onions by 43% and cabbage by more than 36%. Other staples becoming less affordable include butter, beets, lamb, milk and sour cream.
Мы без чего-то можем обойтись, но в целом видно,
We can manage without some sins, but prices have clearly gone up. Still, there's no choice. If you want to eat, you buy.
As of July this year, utility bills rose by nearly 10% year-on-year. In 2025, tariffs are expected to increase by another 12% on average. While wage increases could help offset these rising costs, they remain out of reach for most Russians. High incomes are reserved for those working directly in war-related roles, either on the front lines or in the defense industry. Public sector employees, however, should not expect raises in 2025. According to State Duma plans, 40% of the budget will go to defense and security. In 2025, Russia's military expenditures will surpass combined spending on education, healthcare, social policy and the national economy.
Конечно же, это делается за счет других секторов экономики.
Of course, this comes at the expense of other sectors of the economy. Inflation, taxes will rise, and teachers and other public sector workers won't get raises. But when a leader cares nothing for millions of lives, when he is consumed by the sick idea of committing genocide against Ukraine, he won't bother counting pennies or percentages. His ultimate goal is destruction.
Уже в среднесрочной перспективе.
In the medium term, things will turn very bad for the Russian Federation and its citizens. In my view, the key destabilizing factor within the essentially totalitarian system Putin has built in Russia will be the scale of public discontent, widespread dissatisfaction with Putin rule, and by extension, his administration.
Russia's astronomical war spending and budget deficits are simultaneously products of Putin's imperial ambitions and drivers of inflation. Weekly inflation rates have already reached 0.5%.
Nearly 1.5% inflation per month. This is the highest rate in 22 years. Notice how the central bank has been aggressively raising interest rates for a year and a half. Over the past 4 months alone, they've increased the rate by a staggering 5% points. To put this into perspective, the single increase is higher than the total interest rates of many central banks worldwide. Some of those don't even reach 5%. Despite these efforts, it is clear that inflation is reversing and heading in the opposite direction.
Инфляционные темпы искусственно занижаются за счет...
Inflation rates are being artificially suppressed by burning through internal reserves. However, this doesn't mean Russians won't notice worrying signs. On the contrary, they will. These signs will manifest as rising fuel prices at gas stations and higher food prices in stores, making everyday essentials increasingly expensive.
Russia's persistent inflation is morphing into stagflation, a deadly mix for economic stagnation and rising prices. Experts point out that the Soviet economy could not survive such conditions, leading to its collapse. Western analysts suggest that severe financial difficulties might eventually force the Kremlin to face reality and compromise during potential peace negotiations.
Contrary to the propaganda, when Russia comes to the table of future peace negotiations, it will now be threatened by stagflation and having suicidally bankrupted its future. Sanctions have a cumulative effect, and Moscow is far from done paying the price for its special operation. From Le Monde publication.
Putin, как по мне, тот человек, который...
Putin, in my opinion, is the person who has done the greatest harm to Russians. Why? Because he essentially gives away the nation's resources that rightfully belong to the citizens of the Russian Federation, for next to nothing. He sells off the country's sovereignty left and right, handed it over to countries like China. In essence, he has already restored a state of vassalage.
For most Russians, 2025 offers little hope of economic relief, as the consequences of war, inflation, ineffective monetary policies and sanctions converge. The very existence of Russia as a state could be at stake. Reported by Serhiy Kulas, Larisa Petruk, UATV News.